Hello, it's Chris. How are you? I thought I'd come on and just share a quick little tip with you. Um, this is my really old ironing press. It's an old Elmer press, Swiss made, blue jeans. Got a few different settings on here. Like up the top here is my hottest for cotton, and then cotton, blended wools, and then wools and suede, silk and things like that. Now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adhering some stabiliser to some leather. I've tested my leather on a scrap on different temperature settings and that there, and I find that to adhere what I'm using is the Decaville light fusible interfacing, and it'll give my leather a little bit more structure. And I found what works really well for me is sort of this blended wool cotton, between sort of wool and cotton, so sort of like a medium heat. Now this is the old original ironing board cover that came with it. Oh, there's one under here. This one's been on there, and that I don't want to take that off because I actually quite like the built-in padding now that I've got there. I was going to make a new cover, but with the amount of pressing in that I do, I've just found this is the best option, because when you're doing a lot of fusible interfacing and things like that, the adhesive sort of can at different times come through the materials, and this is hence why you end up with this sort of a look all the time. I could make myself a new one so it's nice and pretty under there, which I might do, and it'd just be a thin layer. I like using the cheapest thing you can get. For me, where I live, is Coles baking paper. So any of the home brand or cheapest baking paper that you can use. It's designed to withstand heat. It can go into the oven. It will burn, but what I like is it's so cheap, and when I feel this gets a little bit distorted or a little bit of glue, from the adhesives on it, I throw it out. So I put a layer of that down. Now I'm going to grab the piece of leather that I'm working with, which is this stunning gold, and this is a lambskin. So it's a lambskin leather. What I've done is, you probably can't see them, I've got very fine line markings, because it was just enough of a line marking guide for where I want to place my stabiliser so that it sits inside here. I've cut my stabiliser, so I've cut it out to the exact measurements that I need, and I want to centre this sort of horizontally and vertically, but the main area I want it to line up with on this pattern is up the top, but I don't want it to come right up to this seam allowance line, because I want to allow for the turn of cloth. Every piece of fabric that you use has a thickness to it. Depending on how thick that fabric is, sort of determines how far I move that down. Now when I'm finished this garment, I want to have a half an inch seam allowance. So for this one here, that's my seam allowance line there, I'm allowing about 1/8 of an inch for that turn of cloth, which would be approximately 2 layers of that, and that should give me my half-inch mark. What I can also do is on this stabiliser, I would have done that before I came here if I sort of needed it, but I can do it afterwards, is once I've stabilised this, I will mark a half-inch line on that stabiliser, so that when I am folding this over, because this is going to be a drop-in lining, I know exactly where this leather should line up, and it should marry up pretty good. Won't matter if there's a slight little bit of a gap in there, because this will be where I'll be top stitching here. So that all looks pretty good. I've got about the same distance at the bottom, about 1/8 of an inch, And I've allowed it a little bit more on the sides here for when I turn that one, so that when I do that stitching line for this side seam, it gives me plenty to turn back, and then I'll be top stitching that as well. So now if your stabiliser or your material you're using, you have a hard time getting it to lay flat, or the Decaville, because the Decaville has a tendency to curl, what you can do, and this also helps increase the adhesion of whatever fusible stabiliser you're using, is to preheat the base material that you're adhering to. Just going to get that in the centre there. Place that down, and I'm just going to heat this for, say, I usually count to my head, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that is usually enough. That feels really nice and warm. Then I can get this stabiliser, and you'll find it will lay down quite nicely. And if you put your fingers on it, it will actually help melt and hold that stabiliser in place exactly where you want it, so that it doesn't shift at all on you during that fusing process. If you find at all that this has moved a little bit, just pick it up. It's not fused there yet, it's just sort of just sitting there waiting for you to manoeuvre it however you like. I think that's pretty good. Depends how fussy you want to be. I'm quite fussy. So that looks good to me now. But you can see that Decaville has stayed there nice and flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the press down, and I'll count to about 6. I'll lift it up, and then we'll check it from there. I know 6 works well. I've tested it on this material, and I've also went up to 15 seconds just in case. Go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. I'll lift it. Decaville actually fuses quite fast. Now, because this is not quite wide enough, I will come back and I'll do these sections, but you can see, even just with that 6 seconds, if I probably tugged at that, I could get it off because the adhesive's still warm, but it's like fused. If you find your material's quite sensitive, baking paper, because now I'm going to go back a second time, I am going to put the second layer of the baking paper on. And what's great with baking paper too is if you do want to lay it over something, you can actually still see the material through it. And also, if the material's hot when you want to take it off, and sometimes when you directly pick up the material, it warps and buckles, whatever it is, just lift up your 2 pieces and you can bring your material away without disturbing it or moving anything. So it does work quite well. So now I'm going to press this again, and I'll count for another 6 seconds. Just moving it down because I want to make sure this end gets pressed. 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6. Usually count that sort of to myself. Now I'm going to, I don't even have to touch this material. Grab the baking paper, slide that back, and now I'm going to press this end here. So I want to capture that, and I'll do the same again. I'll just hold that for, say, 6, round about that 6 second mark. Again, yeah, just depends on the materials, but preheating the fabric, especially leather, really does work. So I can see already I've got a beautiful adhesion on that material. You can pick it up using that paper. You can have a look. Feels pretty cool. Now I can see where I did that last little press just there. There's like a little indentation from the machine. I'm just going to line up where that Decaville is. So now I can just sort of do this whole centre piece. Put that baking paper back down again, and I'll just give it another little press. Don't need, I'm sort of just pressing it just to get that little dip out. Down there, Just remove that. And turn this over. And there's our piece of leather. Now it's still got to cool down, like it's just warm, but that Decaville is not going anywhere. And I've given this a nice bit of structure now, so I'll show you the piece. Got one here that I'm going to also be fusing. So that's no stabiliser, and that's stabiliser. So that's your Decaville light on the leather. Absolutely beautiful. Stunning leather. I've made a wallet out of this. I'll just quickly grab it and show you. Look, it's gorgeous. Got it just here. Have a look. Here. So that's the leather. That's the back of the leather. Still got the protective tape on here. And then inside the wallet, got card slots. And then this is my take on a phone pouch, zipper, pocket, and card slots. And it's got like your bellows on there. So this is a custom order. My customer seen mine and wanted one. Isn't it gorgeous? I've made my own logo, so that's my own branding on there. This is done with rose gold foil on the black vinyl here, so we've got a combination of black vinyl with the leather, so they're just like little accents. So yeah, it's my wallet. Okay, that's all. I just wanted to share the tip there about fusing there. Just something little handy. Might come in handy one day. Okay, bye.